So obviously this isn't my normal format for a video. I haven't done a video like this thus far. But I wanted to talk a little bit about this topic because it is relative to my channel's content and the kinds of topics that I tend to cover and the things that I tend to revolve around and the general place in time where you can put a lot of my content and a lot of the stuff that I look at and react to and vibe with. Namely, the topic of why I swapped one of these for one of these. And the answer is both complex and incredibly simple. To put it into the simplest terms first, I just got sick of it. I got sick of it. And I've noticed that when this discourse goes around, when people talk about smartphones and things like that, they tend to kind of gravitate to either end of the spectrum. Either they're here to stay, you might as well have one, even up to and including you're weird if you don't have one, or way down on the other side where they're basically Ted Kaczynski and they're saying throw it in a lake. You don't need it, don't interact with it. All technology is bad. Electricity is scary and Thomas Edison was a witch. Blah blah. Right? I'm a little more in the middle of that. I don't think that we need them, and I don't think that anybody who chooses not to have one is weird. But at the same time, I accept and recognize that they're here. Some people genuinely do need them. I know some people get phones for work, whether from their, the company that they work for or whatever. But, they have apps that they need, they maybe even do their banking with it, they pay with it instead of using a physical card, they have, their, Apple Pay or whatever. And that's all fine. I'm not insisting that if you have a smartphone, you throw it away. I'm not even insisting that you stop using it. If you have a genuine need for it, then that's fine. Do what you gotta do. But if you're a bit like me, and you're sick of smartphones, you hate smartphones, social media, apps, everything always needs updates, everything always wants to send you notifications, everything always wants you to have a subscription, there's ads everywhere, algorithms are sending you everything, stuff is getting censored, all of that kind of stuff. A dumb phone might be the better option, because it's not quite so far to the end as throw your phone in a lake. You can still keep it for certain stuff, like the smartphone. But something like what I have, which is a Nokia 3210, might be a good option, and I genuinely advocate for it, because even though I've never been somebody who has been addicted to social media, I've never had that problem. I've never really had the doom scrolling problem, right? I've never been a fan of social media. Up until starting the VTubing thing, I didn't have social media, and now the only thing I have, at least to start with, is a Twitter. That wasn't even my problem. I wasn't even trying to detox from that, but I had this moment, and I guess you could describe it as like death by 1,000 cuts or whatever, but I had this moment last year, sometime around, I don't know, June. It's been a little over a year now, where I was sitting at my desk and my phone was on my desk. My old smartphone. I wasn't looking at it. I wasn't using it. It wasn't going off. It wasn't lighting up. It was just a featureless black rectangle in a case on my desk. Just a featureless inactive obelisk. And for whatever reason, this is why I said it was like death by 1,000 cuts. Cumulatively, something had built up inside of me to where I looked at the phone sitting there on the desk and I hated it. I hated this inanimate object. Now, I understand that that's kind of loony, right? The inanimate object is not responsible for this. The inanimate object hating an inanimate and the hating an inanimate object is dumb, but I think it's a little bit less cuckoo to essentially channel your feelings towards it like a keystone based on what it represents, which is all of that stuff that I was talking about earlier. Social media, apps, updates, notifications, subscriptions, blah blah, right? And it was weird because, again, I didn't use social media prior to the VTubing thing, which I only started less than 3 months ago, as of recording this. And even then, I'm not on it a whole lot, right? And basically, I think it was that same day, or the very next day, I went on Amazon, and you can probably get these from a bunch of other retailers as well. And mine is not the only type. I kind of wish I'd done a little bit more exploring, because while I love mine, there are some other options out there that I think are intriguing, but you can do your own research on that if you're interested. I went onto Amazon and I bought a Nokia 3210, the 2024 re-release of the original 1999 model. Because obviously these days, a lot of the actual old phones, as nice as it would be to use a legitimate relic from that time, they cannot communicate with modern towers. They're not capable of 3G, 4G, whatever else. And it took about 2 days to arrive, I think. It wasn't the next day. I don't know why. But it showed up, I put my SIM card into it, and I booted it up, and I put my Samsung in a drawer. And it might be psychosomatic or, something of a placebo, right? But in that moment, I just felt relaxed. In a way that I haven't, or up to that point that I hadn't, for I don't even know how long. And again, maybe it's just kind of treating the Samsung, my old phone, as something of a boogeyman or something like a talisman for all of this kind of stuff. What it represented more than what it actually was. But I did. I felt different as soon as I did it. And I went through, I explored it, I saw everything that it had on offer, and I'm not going to be doing a walkthrough or a tour of my particular phone in this video, right? It's not really about that. I can do that sometime if people are interested, but not really what the goal is here. I got my wallpaper set up, and I got the boot message set up. There's like a little string of text that appears on the screen when you boot up, and you can change that to whatever you want. So I did that, I made sure my contacts were there, and that was it. And that was it. I haven't used my smartphone like a phone since. I have it in a drawer for the few times that I do need it, which is, I still have Google Authenticator on there and stuff like that. I couldn't be rid of it entirely. That would be more challenging, I grant you. But that was it. And shortly after, because I would use my phone, my Samsung, to listen to music, I also, just as an experiment, I bought a cheap MP3 player, which is... I had to get it from behind me. I can't remember the brand. An AGPTEK, which this was about, I think, $40. I was gonna buy a refurbished iPod, but I wasn't sure if this was something that I would stick to, and refurbished iPods are kind of expensive. So I went with this. I've got a sticker on the back of it. And again, I'm not gonna do a complete feature review or a complete overview of that. But something that I've noticed is that for the MP3 player, right, rather than Spotify, where you just have everything that's on Spotify at your fingertips. You gotta deal with ads if you don't have a premium subscription, yada yada, but anything that is on Spotify you can listen to. It's all there. But, and maybe this is a personal flaw, maybe other people don't have this problem, I didn't tend to discover a lot of new music on Spotify. I would just kind of stay listening to what I already had, and I had premium at the time. I no longer have premium because I no longer use Spotify. But I would just skip through everything, and you can still have days like that sometimes, but the way that now it's like I have to get a song and put it on my MP3 player, and I do want to upgrade to a refurbished iPod at some point, right? Just because I think overall the interface is better, the controls are better. This one is a little bit clunky, it's a $40 Chinese MP3 player, what do you expect? But I find that I more actively seek out new music, and then there's this process that I go through, right? Where it's oh, I really like this, and instead of just clicking on a plus symbol to put it in a playlist or whatever, I have to be oh, I really like this, and I have to go, and I have to download the song, and, if I really want to be thorough, I have to get the album art, because obviously you don't have anything like iTunes in this scenario that does all that kind of stuff for you. And I have to put it, and I have to organize it, and I have to plug in my MP3 player, and I have to put it on there. But I've found that I appreciate the music that is on that MP3 player more than I ever appreciated anything that was just put in a Spotify playlist and that I would occasionally come up on shuffle and might get skipped again, And this tangent is all to say that we have, for a multitude of reasons, become a culture of convenience. And I don't think that's inherently a bad thing. Convenience isn't inherently a bad thing, but I think, as with anything, there is such a thing as too much of a good thing. Like convenience, just for example. I think sometimes that convenience comes at a higher cost than we recognize. And I think it's something that instinctively we're pretty resistant to letting go of, because once you have that convenience, walking away from it for a lot of people, and myself included in some regards, that can be very tricky. It feels like you're sacrificing something. But ultimately, I feel more clear-minded and less weighed down by this black rectangular obelisk that was consistently haunting me, despite, again, me not being somebody who was on social media or doom scrolling a lot. Don't have TikTok. I didn't have Twitter. No Instagram, any of these kinds of things. And still, it felt like a benefit, it felt like a weight off to have the portal with all of that in there just put to the side. And I haven't felt a compulsion to use it since. And something that goes along with that is something that maybe I'll make a separate video about. This one's already getting a little bit long. I only want it to be a short video. I don't want to yap for too long on one thing, because I have a difficult time staying on topic, if you can't already tell. But, the concept of essentially, I don't know if this is the right term for it, right? But re-centralizing the internet in your own home. Making it so that the internet isn't everywhere. And again, I recognize that this is not something that everybody is able to do. But if you're able to do it, this idea of having a desktop PC, and that's where the internet lives, right? Like the family computer of old, or the computer room of old in your house, right? Back in the 90s or whatever. That, too, I think is healthy. Now, granted, if you're like me and you're home quite a lot and you can be on the computer for a lot of the day, it really doesn't make all that much of a difference. But at the same time, I think it is something that can be beneficial, especially if you just feel overwhelmed. If you just feel like this stuff is following you and, if for lack of a less dramatic term, haunting you, I definitely recommend it. If you don't want to go so far as to get a Dumbphone, just turn off the Wi-Fi. Keep your router on, but turn off the Wi-Fi, and just keep the internet in one place for a day or two, and see how that feels. I mean, you know, depending on if you can do that, depending on who you live with, whatever. But I think there is another path that isn't just accepting all of it or throwing your phone in a lake. I think, or you know, accepting all of it or having access to the internet 24/7 in your pocket everywhere you go, and just needing to deal with the outcomes and the ramifications of that. I think there is a middle road. There is another way, and to be perfectly honest, you know, call this egotistical, but I think I'm onto it. I think that middle road is basically turning back the clock to like 2005 and approaching the world that way, approaching technology that way. Don't deny yourself all of the convenience. Don't reject everything outright. Don't start, you know, looking into buying a cabin in the woods or a farm in the middle of nowhere. You don't need to be Amish, but you don't need to be terminally online either. And I don't know. Ultimately, I feel like that is kind of the thesis behind my content, and the approach that I have behind my content is this recognition that we live in the world that we live in, but that not wanting to engage with it on the terms that seem to be the default laid out for you, where it's like take it or leave it. There is a way that isn't going without everything. If that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. You probably won't be on YouTube watching a VTuber talk about this anyway, if that's the case, but my goal, essentially, is to bring more people to this mindset. To the mindset where, yeah, okay, it's cool to have, like, you know, those things where it's like, wow, look at everything on this catalog page from, like, Electronics Boutique or whatever, or Radio Shack. All of the stuff on this page is now in one device. Okay? What if it wasn't, though? What if, instead, we had a phone, and we had a music player, and maybe we had a handheld console? Maybe that feels a little better. Because to me, it sure as hell does. So, it's up to you if it's something that you want to explore. Maybe I'll talk about this more and in more detail later on. I don't know, but I just kind of wanted to make this video just sort of talking about this concept and a little bit of my experience with it. And if you think it's dumb, that's fine, that's a-okay. If you know, want to go out with your iPhone and your AirPods and your Apple Watch, and you want to have a sensor in your sneakers, and you want a fridge with a screen and a car with a screen, and, you know, you want Alexa to talk to you when you get home and all that kind of stuff, that's fine. You can look at me with my Nokia and my MP3 player and my Game Boy Advance SP out in public, and you can think I'm a complete fucking dumbass, and that's fine. I do get weird looks when I use the phone in public, by the way. It's very funny. Ultimately, live your life how you want to live it, but just know, if you don't like smartphones, but you don't want to be without a phone, there is a place for you in the middle. Anyway, that's it for me. I will leave the rest of my ramblings for another time. If you want to be here for that, make sure to hit subscribe, give it a thumbs up if you liked it, and if you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. That's okay too. You're the emperor here. I'm just the jester performing in the arena for your amusement. Or not. Just don't send any lions after me, okay?